the headlines, addressing the National Assembly, President Park Geun-hye says now is the golden time to boost the Korean economy's recovery. North Korea spurns South Korea's offer of high-level talks this week in its protest against propaganda leaflets floated across the border by South Korean activists. And an unmanned NASA-contracted rocket explodes midair early Tuesday evening, about 6 seconds after liftoff. The good news, though, is that no deaths or injuries have been reported. Hello and welcome to the newscast, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Chae-ri. We begin with South Korean President Park Geun-hye's parliamentary address today. She laid out the details of the Korean government's budget for next year, which is nearly $20 billion more than this year. The president appealed to lawmakers to quickly pass the budget bill, as well as other ones related to boosting the economy. Choi You-sun tells us more.
Despite the risks of financial losses and ballooning debt, the president said if Korea doesn't invest more to address the challenges of low growth, low inflation, and a weak Japanese yen, the Korean economy could fall into a long-term slump. Manufacturing production in the third quarter shrank by nearly 1%, and exports also dropped significantly.
지금이야말로 우리 경제가 도약하느냐, 정체하느냐의 갈림길에서 경제를 다시 세울 수 있는 마지막 골든 타임입니다.
Referring to her three-year economic innovation plan, President Park talked about her vision of a creative economy which involves converging IT and different sectors to spur growth and stimulate the job market. And so the government will increase its support for entrepreneurs, startups, and small to mid-sized firms next year by 17% to a total of some $8 billion. The government has also significantly increased funds for safety and welfare to bolster both the hard and software of safety management and to provide the country's seniors and low-income households with more financial support. President Park also asked the parliament to cooperate in completing by the year's end reforms of the public pension system, which has suffered an expanding deficit.
그동안 국가를 위해 헌신해온 공무원들의 희생을 요구해야 한다는 점에서 솔직히 어느 정부도 이런 개혁이 두렵고 피하고 싶을 것입니다. 그러나 매년 막대한 국민 세금이 투입되어야 하는 상황을 그대로 방치할 수는 없습니다.
Before wrapping up her speech, President Park said the government managing finances alone will do no good unless the parliament moves to pass a backlog of bills designed to improve the people's livelihoods and to strengthen the nation's safety system. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
And right after her policy address at the National Assembly, President Park Geun-hye held a meeting with leaders and policymakers of the two main rival parties here in Korea. And our Chim Min-gil tells us more.
At the meeting, President Park Geun-hye and party leaders shared the view that the rival parties put aside differences and speed up long-stalled legislation that has been blamed for a slow economic recovery and public sector reform.
원래 목표는 그 경제를 활성화시켜서 세수도 늘리고 이렇게 하겠다는 건데 그 고리는 끊어지는 거거든요. 예산만 써버리고 그렇게 되지 않도록 시급한 상황이 꼭 필요한 법안들만 이제 고르고 골라서 이렇게 부탁을 드리는 거니까 좀 시급히 처리를 좀 해주셨으면 하고.
Both parties agreed to pass next year's budget by the legal deadline of December 2nd, and the three bills seen as the most urgent by the end of this month. The three bills will help uncover the truth behind April's ferry sinking, enable public sector restructuring, and allow the government to go after illegally obtained assets. Speaking of the government's economic policies, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's interim leader raised concerns over the government's stimulus measures.
Finance Minister Choi You-sun's stimulus drive dubbed Choinomics does not seem to lack specific policies to actually spur economic growth and restore consumer confidence. We believe the key to economic revitalization is improving livelihoods of the general public.
Moon said he believed the president will long be remembered in the country's political history if her government successfully removes inefficiencies in the public sector or reforms the pension program for civil servants by the end of the president's term in 2017. Wednesday's meeting with rival party leaders and policymakers comes as President Park seeks a breakthrough in the prolonged political deadlock between the two rival parties. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Tomorrow's high-level meeting proposed by South Korea has been scrapped as North Korea says that it will not be showing up unless the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists are banned. Seoul says it's still open to talks but added it has no plans to reach out to North Korea for now. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
North Korea has turned down South Korea's proposal for a second round of high-level talks slated for this Thursday. In a message sent early Wednesday morning via the Inter-Korean military hotline, the North said it is up to Seoul to decide whether to proceed with the high-level talks or to cling on to the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists. South Korea's unification ministry reiterated it has no legal grounds to ban the activities of civic groups.
Although we maintain a consistent stance of resolving issues through inter-Korean dialogue, we cannot give in to unjustifiable demands.
The two Koreas agreed to meet for high-level talks sometime between late October and early November upon a visit to South Korea by a high-level North Korean delegation last month. Since then, tensions have escalated over the controversial leaflet launches, even leading to an exchange of fire across the border. While the meeting may not happen within the planned time frame, some experts say both parties will want to talk things out within this year.
High-level talks are essential for improving inter-Korean relations and must take place this year in order to smooth things out for 2015. It could take some time, but the possibility of a second round of high-level talks is high.
Still, it's a question of who will reach out first. South Korea says it is open to talks, but made clear that it does not have plans to make additional proposals to the North for now. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Special Envoy for the six-party nuclear talks, Sidney Seiler, has listed some representative examples for North Korea to show its sincerity towards denuclearization. Speaking to reporters in Seoul Wednesday, Seiler said Pyongyang should end its nuclear activities and refrain from provocative actions to return to dialogue, but made clear that Washington has not loosened its standard for resuming the six-party talks. The multilateral framework aimed at denuclearizing North Korea involves the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, and has been stalled since 2008. Seiler is currently on a three-nation trip that includes stops in China and Japan. And staying on the North Korean issue, the UN has got one step closer to referring North Korean officials to The Hague for human rights abuses. A draft proposal on the violations taking place in the North Korean regime has been made official, and the UN General Assembly could vote on it as early as next month. Park Ji-won has the details.
The United Nations Third Committee, which deals with social, humanitarian, and cultural matters, has released a North Korean human rights draft proposal online. The 8-page draft urges the UN Security Council to take appropriate action to address the dire human rights situation in the North. It also says referrals to the International Criminal Court are in order, although it doesn't mention specific names. The draft expresses serious concerns about North Korea's systematic, extensive, and long-term crimes against humanity and denounces rampant human rights violations taking place inside political prison camps, which include forced abortions, torture, and starvation. The draft proposal was based on a 400-page report on North Korea's human rights situation published by an independent UN commission. The Third Committee is expected to pass the draft sometime next month, to be followed by a vote at the UN General Assembly. Adoption of the proposal by the General Assembly would not be legally binding, but South Korean officials say the vote would be a statement in and of itself. Marzuki Darusman, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in North Korea, said Tuesday that North Korea had invited him for a visit so he could investigate the human rights allegations firsthand. But that offer was made under one condition, that the UN removed the stipulation about referring North Korean officials to the ICC in a draft submitted to the third committee. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The body that was found inside the sunken Seoul ferry yesterday has finally been retrieved this evening after poor conditions hampered recovery efforts all day long. Our Kwon-soa has the details.
Nearly 24 hours after it was located inside the wreckage of the ill-fated Seoul ferry, divers were able to retrieve the body this Wednesday evening. It marks the first discovery in 102 days and comes more than 6 months after the ferry capsized and sank off Korea's southwestern coast. Due to decomposition, officials could not identify the body but said DNA tests would be performed soon. The body is presumed to be that of a female victim, as it was wearing stockings and found near a women's restroom on the 4th deck of the vessel. Currently, there are 4 female victims missing, 3 of whom are high school students. Earlier in the day, divers failed in reaching the body due to poor underwater visibility and fast currents, delaying the recovery operations. Victims' families raised doubts about the efficiency of ongoing search efforts, as the latest discovery was made in the exact location they had specifically asked divers to search. Divers said they had previously swept the area more than a dozen times, but believe currents may have recently carried the body to where it was found. The discovery pushes the death toll in the tragedy to 295, with 9 still missing. This past weekend, victims' families voted to continue the underwater search operation inside the ferry and to hold off on raising the 6,800-ton vessel. The families of the missing held a press briefing Wednesday afternoon, calling on the government for more thorough search efforts, as they believe the body found on Tuesday raises the chance that the rest of the missing have not been carried away. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
Korea posted another current account surplus in the month of September. That's 31 months in a row. The Bank of Korea says the surplus stood at $7.6 billion last month, up $420 million from the month before. The central bank attributed this rise to strong exports that went up more than 4% on month. The deficit of services account, which includes spending by Koreans overseas, shrank to $280 million from the $730 million recorded in the summer vacation month of August. Supporting startups and fostering small and mid-sized companies as major exporters is at the heart of President Park Geun-hye's drive to turn Korea into what she calls a creative economy. But there are already signs that startups have a leg up on their much larger Korean counterparts in the global market. Song Ji-sun tells us more.
Scanning fingerprints is now a common way of keeping work hour records for employees. This Korean company called Suprema has won global recognition for developing and marketing the widest range of products in biometrics and access security industries. As the only company in the world capable of rolling out all products by using its own technologies and parts, it grabbed a 60% share in the fingerprint recognition module market in less than 15 years since its founding.
Many come up with business ideas, but the key to success for startups is commercializing those ideas. We've proved our technical prowess by repeatedly winning in the industry's most coveted competitions.
Suprema is one of some 63 Korean startups that enjoy #1 market share in the global stage, according to Korea's Small and Medium Business Administration. Although the Korean corporate sector is best known for the success of chaebols, or conglomerates, startups account for nearly half of Korea's 130 companies that have grabbed the largest market share in the world. Large companies represent only a quarter of them. The startup stocks range from manufacturers of juicers to vessel engine bearings. Aggressive investment in research and development is the key to startups could keep their lead in the global market. These leading startups are also actively diversifying their export markets, shipping their products on average of 31 countries overseas. Even if Korean startups manage to develop competitive technologies, many of them need support in other areas.
These startup businesses venture overseas markets solely with their technologies, but they lack efficient means to gain access to global clients. The government can help them win recognition by arranging exhibitions and other international events.
Industry experts also point out educational reform is needed to foster entrepreneurship and creativity badly needed to turn Korea into a trendsetter from a fast follower. 송지선, Arirang News.
Korea's business climate ranks as the world's fifth, the highest ranking the country has ever achieved. Citing the World Bank's Doing Business report on Wednesday, the country's finance ministry said the ranking also marks the fourth straight year Korea has been listed in the top 10. The report said the ranking comes thanks to improvements in sectors related to startups, granting construction approvals, and upholding the rights of minority shareholders. Singapore took the top spot, followed by New Zealand and Hong Kong. The World Bank has been analyzing the business environments of 189 countries every year since 2003. Korea is charting a path to widespread use of digital documentation. This means going paperless not only in meeting rooms and conferences, but also in our daily lives. And that's one of the goals pushed by the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference underway in Busan. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
Everything is going digital these days. From paying taxes to filing out resident registration documents, the use of electronic documentation has made tasks like these much more convenient. Korea is already a leader in the government digital documentation field. But some sectors are still reliant on paper, and experts say it may be a while before the use of electronic documentation is as widespread.
It is a cultural task, and it won't be easy trying to bring everyone on board. But considering the era that we live in, digitalizing documents is something that needs to be done, and soon. There will be no more paperwork if it all goes digital.
But there's still a number of obstacles. Only 43% of institutions and businesses in Korea use electronic documentations, lower than the government's aim of 50% by 2015. And experts attribute the gap to a lack of understanding and awareness among everyday users. A group of experts gathered on the sidelines of the quadrennial ITU conference on Wednesday to discuss the possible directions for Korea in fully implementing these services on the domestic front and making inroads to the global market.
Fostering growth among private enterprises is the key to helping the sector expand. If the government puts more effort into sponsoring these services in the finance and medical sectors, where electronic documents are widely used, there will be no concerns about reaching the everyday user.
The National IT Industry Promotion Agency has already gotten a head start, and officials there say digital documentation services will soon be a reality in the IT sector. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Busan.
Officials at NASA have confirmed that an unmanned rocket has exploded just seconds after taking off from a launch pad in the U.S. To tell us more, Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center. Paul, this was a privately contracted rocket on its way to the International Space Station. So what went wrong?
Well, in the aftermath of this catastrophic failure, all eyes are on the American space company Orbital Sciences, which had built the rocket in a multi-billion-dollar deal with NASA. The 14-story Antares rocket erupted in flames just 6 seconds after liftoff from a commercial launch site in Virginia on Tuesday evening. NASA's mission control in Houston said that there was significant damage to the facility, but confirmed that no one was hurt.
The investigation will include evaluating the debris that we will find around the launch pad and everything associated with it. With that, I do want to caution the public, and Bill will speak a little bit more about that. This is an accident site, and it is a rocket. And it had a lot of hazardous equipment or hazardous materials on board that people should not be looking for or wanting to collect souvenirs over.
The spacecraft was to deliver some 2,300 kilograms worth of cargo and equipment to the International Space Station.
And shifting to Ebola crisis, Australia has been hit with heavy criticism from the international community for its recent moves to close its borders with the West African countries affected by the deadly virus. So why has there been such a strong backlash to this latest move?
Well, the concern is that it sets a very alarming precedent for other developed countries. Australia had carried out a visa ban on all citizens of the West African countries worst hit by the Ebola outbreak. Australia explained that its first priority was to protect its borders, as the disease would get out of control if it hit the Pacific. Meanwhile, Anthony Banbury, the head of the Ebola mission for the UN, said government policies should not deter medical staff from traveling to West Africa.
What I will say is that decisions should be based on science and facts and not hype and hysteria, and decisions should be taken in a way that will promote the most rapid, effective response to the Ebola crisis in West Africa as possible. And anything that will dissuade foreign trained personnel from coming here to West Africa and joining us on the front line to fight the fight would be very, very unfortunate.
The UN mission has set itself a deadline to have 70% of cases of Ebola under treatment by December 1st.
And turning to the U.S., Paul, where top federal officials have raised a security level across the country in the light of continuing terrorist threats. This comes less than a week after the Canadian Parliament was stormed by a lone gunman. So are authorities worried about potential copycat attacks moving forward?
Well, that's just one of the many concerns right now, according to the Department of Homeland Security as of Tuesday. Security at government buildings in Washington and other major cities have been increased, as well as at key infrastructure facilities across the country. A U.S. official, however, said there had been no credible information about any specific plot against a U.S. target.
And finally, the internet search giant Google has unveiled its latest secret project, this time diving into the field of healthcare. I mean, it's known for its wide range of ventures, from space exploration to robot drones. So what's behind this latest experiment?
Well, it's all about nanotechnology. Nanoparticles that are 1 billion times smaller than a meter are being developed to travel through the human body to scan for any health problems from cancer to even high cholesterol. The tech giant announced on Tuesday its latest invention involving a swallowable pill loaded with millions of these high-tech nanoparticles.
The analogy in medicine is like, imagine you want to explore Parisian culture, and you do it by flying a helicopter over Paris once a year. That's what doctors do now. And what we're hoping to do is these little particles go out and mingle with the people. We call them back to one place and we ask them, hey, what'd you see? Did you find cancer? Did you see something that looks like a fragile plaque for a heart attack?
Google says the experimental work is still in the early stages, but added that they were looking for commercial partners who could bring the product to market in the near future. Chetty?
I love the analogy there. So here's hoping that they keep that health data private, though. And thank you so much, Paul. And we'll leave it there, but we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hello, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with weather updates. Well, winter is just around the corner and ski resorts here in Korea are preparing to open up soon. And today was another brisk and chilly autumn day. Most regions saw a 15-degree gap in temperatures between the day and night. Conditions continue to remain dry over on the eastern coast of Gangwon province as well as down in Jeju. Besides that, we are currently under mostly clear skies, but clouds are moving in down south, and it looks like cloudier conditions may lead to light passing sporadic showers tomorrow evening in Jeollanam-do province and Jeju. Looking ahead, some unwelcome news for baseball fans as we may be in for some nationwide heavy downpours this Friday. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul reaches 21 while cities down south hit the low 20s. On to other regions. Cloudy Jeju makes it to 21 while Dokdo hits 18. That's all the updates I have for you now. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.